Some of the questions that arise are, one, some teachings refer to the pancreas or the spleen, or there are other centers. As a matter of fact, someone told me once, our teaching must be higher than yours because we have 12 centers and you have only 7. Well, as a matter of fact, the readings have 12 centers. And we're just addressing these 7 for the moment. Now, another consideration, and I'll not try to develop it fully or defend it or justify it. We'll discuss it as the week goes on. The relationship of the pineal, the pituitary, the relationship of this to light, and which is the light center, the concept of the third eye. Now, you've heard of the third eye. Confusing term. For practical purposes, I usually recommend you just put it aside completely. However, many people are fascinated by the term, and there is an interesting parallel that in many animals, especially lizards and frogs such as that, the pineal functions literally as a third eye. And for some of those, you examine the tissues under a microscope. The tissues of the eye and that of the pineal are almost identical. Now, according to the Edgar Cayce reading, the pituitary should be addressed as the third eye. He says, we're not telling medical science what to do, we're just telling you. So those of you who are seekers with respect to the Edgar Cayce reading may want to reflect on this. Which is the higher center? The pituitary. In medical science, it is known to be the higher center. From the point of view of the readings, it is. Now, in addressing the different chakras, some of you may have put the pituitary as the 6th, and then the pineal as the 7th, the 1,000-petal lotus. The readings reverse this. Now, I want to suggest one reason why. We've designated these 3 centers on the chart as relating to the Trinity. If there is a Trinity, and it's not that God is 3, but rather we're in 3 dimensions, and we use triune concepts for a better understanding. For a better understanding of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are helpful terms. If we're made in the image of God, then that Trinity should be represented within us. Where would be the locus or the site, then, of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? These readings suggest the thyroid can be related to the Spirit, the pineal to the Christ, the pituitary to the Father. Now, which is the higher in the Trinity? Did not Jesus say, I do only what I see the Father doing? Why callest thou me good? Only the Father is good. Not my will but thine, he said. So, the capitulation of the fantastic psychic role of the pineal to the direction of the pituitary is the great final test, so to speak, of Jesus himself in saying, not my will but thine. And I think we have a potential evolution of human consciousness that is not found in other teachings, because in a certain sense, maybe this is a fantastic psychic center such that you could call it a third eye. But when there is that spirit within us to relinquish its potential to the organization of that one which has the responsibility for oneness, then you have an additional step. I'm sure there'll be questions about this. Let's return to the text. We're on page 22, the bottom paragraph. On this page already, this is the 3rd reference to circulation of the light. This is a key concept, of course, in the text. Therefore, you only have to make the light circulate. That's the deepest and most wonderful secret. The light is easy to move, but difficult to fix. If it is made to circulate long enough, then it crystallizes itself. That's the natural spirit body. This crystallized spirit is formed beyond the 9 heavens. It is the condition of which it is said in the book of the seal of the heart, silently thou fliest upward in the morning. All right, all you have to do is make the light circulate, but the light is easy to move, but difficult to fix. Interesting. I've often thought of this text in reference to a whole array of wonderful experiences that may occur to us. An example, you're hearing a lot these days about born-again Christians, or about the Holy Spirit, about the descent of the Holy Spirit and the Pentecostal experience. But there are many things, a good gospel preaching, or a beautiful song, or a sunset, or the smile of a child. There are many things that quicken the light. Somehow the life force is quickened within us. But then it says, it's easy to move, but difficult to fix. It's easy to go to an exciting lecture or sermon or preaching or sing some exciting songs and have the light move. But the sobering observation of these religious conversions and transformations that take place in such moments are that it doesn't always last that long. The light is easy to move, but difficult to fix. Then the text says, if you make the light circulate long enough, and that is day by day, every day, if that is quickened and circulated, then we move toward becoming the light. And that, after all, is the whole purpose of meditation. Comments, Lynn?
No, not on that, Herb. We might as well, though I refer to this business of the center. I gave you a reference in the readings. Father May immediately produced it here for us. 1468-5, if any of you want to look it up upstairs. The spiritual arises from the centers in the leaden glandular forces. He uses the word leaden glandular forces that are as hidden energies, or the very nature of the creative or reproductive forces. They are the abilities of each center, each gland, each atom to reproduce itself within the body, which is the very nature of a glandular reaction, which is an interesting, the recreation capacity, and Herb was speaking of that in the glands, for example, taking over each other's activity. If one of them is temporarily out of order, if you remove one of them, the others go to work for it, and the tissue actually creates and can recreate itself in these other activities, in the other glandular centers.
There's a reference in this paragraph to the 9 heavens. Just one speculation. On your chart of the 7 centers, we've associated these centers with the planets. And remember, we are caught up not just in the Earth, but in the solar system. And between incarnations, we have experiences related to dimensions associated with those planets. Now, it may be that we're saying that this crystallized spirit being formed beyond the 9 heavens is to say that it is formed beyond the limitations of these several dimensions which were caught up in the present solar system. Top of page 23, in carrying out this fundamental principle, you need to seek for no other method, but must only concentrate your thought on it. Mind is the builder, remember? The book Ling Yan says, by collecting the thought, one can fly and will be born in heaven. Heaven is not the wide blue sky, but the place where corporeality is begotten in the house of the creative. If one keeps this up for a time, there develops quite naturally, in addition to the body, yet another spirit body. Where is corporeality begotten in the house of the creative? That's the mind is the builder. Remember, we're associating the mind with this Christ center and with light, and it is the movement from energy into manifestation. The mind as the builder is where corporeality is begotten. That's where there is the creative thrust into manifestation.
That body, that spirit body there, yet another spirit body. This is that reference again to, in the very beginning, one of the purposes, 4 purposes of this book as it was outlined, was to prepare for life after death. Prepare for continuity of experience. And without that proper body to work in and work through, you become very limited. And it's fascinating that, and we can't get off into this in great detail, but that all of psychical research speaks to this. And people get terribly confused because of the varieties of kind of supposed communications that are coming from all of these different places, and they all are caught. They're just jumping up and down in the same place in a state of consciousness, and it becomes very confusing that there's any, as Dad said, when you die, you don't suddenly become an enlightened Episcopalian. We are Presbyterians. You're just a dead Presbyterian. So this whole business of consciousness, this meditation increasing and building this finer body to a point where it can function in these other dimensions much more capably. Personally, I think that's what we had, Herb, with Dad. We had a highly evolved spirit body, so to speak, that could travel. Mm-hmm. And when he got out of this body, just stepped out of it, he traveled. He took off. And that's why he was able to do what he did. And when you can find a traveler that can come back and report, then you're working with something that gives you a greater range, to say the least.
Some, especially some spiritualists, teach it's as though there are 2 dimensions. There's this, and then you die. Some don't believe in reincarnation. You die, you go to another plane. They say graduating from the earth plane. We had a friend very interested in this who had a daughter who was mentally retarded all of her life. She died. Then our friend, through a medium, contacted her daughter and was trying to get instructions about how to develop a treatment for cancer. You see, she assumed that simply because she had died, She had graduated from earth living, put her at another level, and because of her rapport with her, she now had access to a new plane. No, it doesn't work that way. That's what Hugh Lynn is saying. You die, you're just a dead whatever you were. But this ability to move. Now, some of you have heard of Robert Monroe, who teaches people how to do out-of-the-body travel. I was talking with him about the time Jonathan Livingston Seagull had come out. Do you remember that Jonathan sort of broke through a barrier and he was into another plane? But there was one time when he broke through that. Now, I asked Bob Monroe, I said, in your experiences, you say you get out of the body, and yet you kind of have a body. Have you ever gotten out of that one a step further? And he said something like this, yes, and it scared me to death. See, we may hear about a movement. We may have a body, in a sense, that can move consciously, or we may direct ourselves to do astral travel. Not that I'm recommending it, but that may happen, and yet there are subtleties beyond that, through which we may not have prepared ourselves to move. Now, what we are saying we feel about Jesus was he could move in and out of any of the dimensions, and that part of Edgar Cayce's extraordinary ability to gather any kind of information related to his having prepared his body to be able to move, to go some places where our consciousnesses haven't prepared us to go. So some of you can walk, but you can't swim. You just don't have a body that has prepared itself to move in that environment.
I think it's important for you to remember that all of us, you're not limited, and you may not be aware of it, but all of us, every single one of us, move in sleep out of the body a little bit. And all of you have had many of you have had experiences. Many of you haven't remembered them. Dad says that we all do this now and then. And I personally, and I think Herb does too, advocate that you not try to do this consciously, but that you let the unconscious do this as it grows and develops. But meditation is the way to bring about this growth and development. That's what we're saying to you, so that you can move on a lighted path.